A loss over the weekend sets up a massive week for the Buffalo Sabres, and it's in Florida to start. Coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome in Monday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. That includes watching us on YouTube. Like and subscribe us there. Want to get into our Locked On Sabres text club? You can get ad-free versions of this show. You can get into our Discord as well. Go to lockedonsabres.supercast.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5, get $200 in bonus bets if you win. And make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, game night, Sabres and Panthers. We'll talk a lot about the week as a whole, as the standings currently look a little bit worse than the last time we spoke, as the Sabres fall to Montreal on Saturday night. The ramifications of that in the standings, what's ahead of them, 3 more games until the Olympic break. They'll be off for 20 after Thursday, February 5th. They'll be home against the Penguins. So 3 more games and an opportunity to widen the gap and hopefully not have it close between now and when Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, hopefully Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen head to Milan for the Olympics, which get going in a little over a week. So that's coming up on today's show. And we'll look at Sabres and Panthers, of course, as well. Get my bet of the night a little bit later on. Some lineup changes, a couple of unique, interesting ones to talk about as well. We will get right into it, though, on the week as a whole and where the standings sit after the Sabres fall to the Canadiens. And very quickly, you know, they are not a team that I am really that devastated with when they lose a single game. If they were to string a bunch together, then I would get pretty worried. But it's a one-off. They have not lost more than, a game in a row in regulation since the 10-game win streak began at the beginning of December. So they fall to Montreal after a 5-game win streak, but tough team to lose one to, right? That's a team that you are fighting with head-to-head in the standings, and at the moment, you are behind them now because you lost that game. And sure, you do have a game in hand, and it's only a 2-point deficit, so you win that extra game that you have between now and the break, and you're, without even having them lose, you are above them in the standings. Sabres are above Montreal on regulation wins, which would put them ahead on a tiebreaker if everything else were to be equal. So it's not the end of the world, but you had a lead against Montreal. You had a lead, and you were up 2-1. You gotta close that game out. In a race like this, to not get anything at all is a tough look. Now, I don't think it was all bad. The Sabres got some unlucky breaks. To me, they were the better team in that hockey game. And that's not to say Montreal's not a good team. I think Montreal is a very good team. I think they are a clear cut above Boston and Detroit with the Sabres, and I think those two teams are below those two. So I like Montreal, but Sabres were the better team in that hockey game, and all the numbers back that up. They had more shot attempts, they had more shots, they had more scoring chances. In some of these categories, they outpaced them 2-1. Shot attempts were 77-53. Shots were 38-31. Scoring chances were 42-21. All these in favor of the Sabres. High danger chances, 23-11. How about the expected goals? 5.4 for Buffalo, 4.4 for Montreal. But they lose the hockey game. That's sometimes how it goes, right? They get lucky. Nick Suzuki is trying to shoot a puck on the side of Lyon and kind of fans on it, and it rolls off the toe and just happened to go to Cole Caulfield, who rips it past Lyon with an open net, and bam, that's your game-winning goal right then and there. Whereas Tage comes down on a power play late, rips one off the iron, and you don't get a goal and you lose. So it was a tough night because I do feel like the Sabres played well. And, that's one where I don't feel totally bad because it is more evidence that they're a good team. That's a good team they played. They outplayed them, and they just were on the poor end of a couple of chances. Were there some things that they could clean up? Sure, absolutely. I mean, sure, the puck rolls off Suzuki's stick in an unlucky way, but your defensemen are all in a position to allow him to be wide open in front of the net. That's a problem, right? I thought Bo Byram could have played a lot better in this game, and I think that play began with him in the corner as a turnover. So it wasn't all good, no doubt about it, but definitely needed to get that one home. So now that you lose that game, Sabres are in the final spot in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Now, at the moment, that is still a 6-point gap, which is good. 6-point lead is strong. There's a newcomer at the top of the non-playoff teams, and that is Columbus. Out of nowhere, from last to first out, the Blue Jackets have won 9 of 10 and 5 in a row. They have 61 points in 54 games played. Then Washington also has 61 points. However, they've played 56 games. So Buffalo 2 games in hand on them. And then tonight's opponent, the Panthers, who are 8 points back. Man, a win. Sabres can put them 10 back in a race, which is big for a head-to-head here because they are a dangerous team. They've lost 3 in a row. So you've got a couple of teams 6 points out or a little bit further. It's still fine. It's still good. I would say the goal this week, with not an easy schedule, 2 road games back-to-back in Florida. The Sabres do not often do well on that trip. 2 very good teams. Florida still dealing with some injuries, but I think they are still dangerous. We saw what they could do to the Sabres a couple of weeks ago. And then you have Tampa, who just played in the Stadium Series game, which was great. And they get an off night, and then they get to play you on a back-to-back. And because we know Alex Lyon is going to start against Florida, that's going to be with Colton Ellis between the pipes. So that's going to be a tough one. Also on the road. And then Thursday, the Sabres host Pittsburgh. You're at home. I think the Sabres are a better team than the Penguins, but the Penguins are having a good year. They've won 6 in a row themselves. They have a plus 22 goal differential, which at the moment is 3rd best in the Eastern Conference. So you got 3 tough games. I think an acceptable result this week is to get 4 out of 6. I think that's acceptable because that, in my mind, would likely give the Sabres a playoff cushion going into the break that is exactly where it is right now. I would take 6 points as a cushion going into the break. I think 8 would be great. 10 even would be phenomenal. But 6 to me is realistic and it's good because I do think there is room to go down. Even though you have one more game than a lot of teams, like Columbus, for instance, they're the first team out, right? The Sabres have 3 games between now and the break, and Columbus only has 2. So you get 4 points out of the 6. You guarantee yourselves 6-point gap between you and Columbus. And you can go down the list, and it's a similar story for a lot of these teams. Washington is 6 points back. They do have 3 games. So there are a couple of teams that do have 3, but a lot of them do have 2. So you got to go team by team for that. Then there's looking up, which is still good too. By points percentage, the Sabres are above Boston. The Bruins losing in a shootout to Tampa in that Stadium Series game. So at the moment, the Bruins have a 1-point lead on Buffalo, but have played 2 more games. So same thing. Boston, are they one of these teams that has 2 games or 3? They have 1 game. How about that? They have 1 game between now and the break. So you get 4 points. Again, you get 3 points. Actually, 3 points. You get 3. You guarantee you're above the Bruins going into the break. So, again, you got the advantage from that aspect just in the context of being off for 20 days on Boston as well. I would take 4. I would sign on the dotted line for that right now, given the state of the standings and also the strength of the opponent that the Sabres have coming up in these next 3. At the moment, Montreal 2 points up, and the Sabres have a game in hand on them. Detroit 3 points above the Sabres, and the Sabres have 2 games in hand on the Red Wings. You really are still in a place though where you win your games in hand, and right now that's 2 on Boston, 2 on Detroit, 1 on Montreal. You win your games in hand on all three of those teams, you're in second. That's true. You win 2 games in hand, you're a point above the Red Wings. You win 1 game in hand on Montreal, you're tied with them, and you have the tiebreaker. You win your 2 games in hand on Boston, you're 3 points ahead of them. So win your games in hand, keep on the pace that you've been on, and you're still looking good for not even just a playoff spot, but a top 3 spot. But just to me, it's important they don't go on a slide here right before the break. Don't have that in your head going in and have the gap be something like 2-3 points or even 4 points. Keep it at 6. That to me is the goal of the week. How winnable is this matchup against the Panthers? We'll look at the changes in the Sabres lineup and also the injuries that Florida are dealing with right now when we come back on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Gametime. Hey, the team needs you, right? We got a game recently with a bunch of away fans in there. You don't want that. There's nothing like being in the arena, crowd, energy, the atmosphere, especially nowadays that the team is good. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle, puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. I pulled up the Gametime app recently on my way to Cleveland. Might have been, the GOAT's last game in Cleveland. So we all drove there, group of us. And before we were by the time we were in Ohio, we didn't have tickets yet, but we knew we were good and we were checking Gametime and got some good deals on tickets pretty close to the last minute on the final day. So you always get great deals. All in price up front is very easy. There's no surprise fee at checkout. The view from your seat, so especially like that just happened with me. I was in an arena I'd never been in before, so getting that feature to see what your angle is like, how high up you are, is very key. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for listening. And we'll get to Sabres and Panthers here. The Sabres have a bit of a change going on in the lineup. And some injury notes. Jordan Greenway is going to be meeting with the doctor again to kind of go through the recovery from his hernia surgery, which does not seem to be going well. They've been doing this pain management thing, and it hasn't really been working. So Greenway out for now, which means Kozak stays in, Malenstein stays in. The one change we are getting to the lineup is Isak Rosen is up from Rochester, and he is going in for Konsta Helenius. I've liked Helenius not as much the last couple of games. Lindy seems to agree. Maybe he thinks it a little bit more strongly than I do, so he's coming out. Rosen is going in on the 4th line. He could be playing center. I would imagine that Kozak will be centering that line with Rosen on one side and Malenstein on the other, so a little bit more speed on that line and a little bit more scoring factor from him playing a depth role. Krebs is going up. Krebs is going to probably center, and Noah Ostlund goes to the wing with Josh Doan. So you got a Krebs, Doan, Ostlund line, and then everything else will stay the same. So interesting lineup changes. I don't really mind any of them. And Metsa, Kessler will be your 3rd pair. Everything else the same. Lyon in net. Florida, meanwhile, we'll get to them because they are still dealing with injuries. And it does appear as though Brad Marchand will not play again. He had come back since he missed that game against Buffalo, got injured again, and it does sound like he will not play in this game. They lost Seth Jones about a month ago, and they've been missing him. And they've got guys that are getting close. Sasha Barkov returning to the ice for practice. He tore his ACL, and it was 4 months ago. I can't imagine he's close to returning, and he obviously won't play tonight, but could be getting closer to a return maybe in the next month or so. I don't know. Like, you're back practicing. I can't imagine it's into the playoffs, and probably back before the playoffs. Unless, they want to fiddle around with some lineup stuff, roster stuff. Anton Lundell, another one, not taking regular lineup rushes, and that's an important piece. He has been their number 1 center. He was when they beat the Sabres here in Buffalo a couple of weeks ago. So with all those injuries, right, and a lot of centermen that are out, you look at what their lineup looks like, and Evan Rodriguez is their number 1 center. And Erod's a good player, right? But not in that role. So he's going up there with Sam Reinhart and Eetu Lutzerainen replacing Lundell. Sam Bennett with Carter Verhaeghe and guy who was back since they played the Sabres last, Matthew Tkachuk, who is in the top 6 with Bennett and Verhaeghe. And then Cole Schwindt with AJ Green and Sandis Vilmanis is on your third line. And nothing really much more to speak of around the roster that you don't know already. Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad is your top pair. And I want to double check this because it wasn't out when I started the show, but their starting goalie for tonight's game is Sergei Bobrovsky. And we'll get to him in a moment on my bet of the night. I like the Sabres' chances a lot in this game. I do think they played well against Montreal. I do think they are going to rebound from that game. I know it's on the road. The Panthers are still dealing with a lot of injuries. You can't lose 2 in a row to this team. This team is beatable. They are losing games. Now, they might have looked like the normal Florida Panthers when you played them last, but I've been watching them a lot lately. I did not like them against St. Louis a couple of nights ago. They've lost 3 in a row, all the Western Conference teams. Winnipeg, St. Louis, and Utah. And one thing about East versus West this year, like that's not normal. The West has been getting pummeled by the East. The East has been beating the West night after night, but not in this scenario. Florida losing to Utah, St. Louis, and Winnipeg. Lost San Jose, by the way, last week. They have lost some they've lost some easy games. Now, they've not played a team from the Eastern Conference, by the way, since they played Washington on January 17th. Right before that, they lost 9-1 to Carolina. Like, they've been very up and down since they beat the Sabres at the beginning of January. So they look good in that game. I like them against the Sabres. They looked like a Florida team that looks all too familiar. But since then, it doesn't look like the Panthers, and the injuries have caught up to them. So I think it's a very, very winnable game for the Sabres in this one. They are favored, by the way. Nope. Sorry, pick them. Plus 100 for Buffalo. So Florida, you want to consider them a small favorite. They're minus 120. What about my bet of the night? We'll get to that, and we'll look around at some other lines coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel's making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. It's where predictions will turn into big plays and stats turning into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you are a new customer, bet just $5, get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Wrapping things up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, the Sabres and the Panthers in Florida. 7-10 puck drop in Sunrise. The Sabres, as we mentioned, plus 100. It's a very even line, minus 120 for Florida. The over-under in this game is at 6.5 goals, so expecting a little bit of action, although it's minus 132 on the under. Was looking around for what I like for bet of the night. And by the way, we are at plus 10.0 units still on the season. And I like for tonight's game a goalie prop. I was looking through and wasn't tempted by any of the goal scoring props. Jack Quinn's number keeps getting a little bit higher and higher. He's up to plus 360. I thought about Krebs for a moment, plus 600, playing on a more offensive line. He's with Osselin and Doan. So kind of like that a little bit. But I like a goalie prop. And I'm going to be betting in a sense here, I made this bet before, on the Sabres to get some shots in this game. Now, they're not always doing that. They have been a little bit up and down. Last 3 games, though, the Sabres have put up 30-plus shots on goal in each of the last 3 games. Florida, on the other hand, is good at preventing shots. On the season, you look at shot rate, how many shots you allow per 60 minutes. Sabres get the 12th most in the NHL. Florida is 23rd, so that, 9th least. So pretty even on either sides of the spectrum. The reason I'm going with this number, though, this bet, is because of the number. I just think it's too low, and I think it's an overreaction to what Sergei Bobrovsky has been doing as of late and what the Panthers have been doing as of late. They have been suppressing shots, and Bobrovsky has not been playing well, so he has not been getting to 20 saves on a regular basis. But the number at 20.5, man, I'm going over. I'm going over on Sergei Bobrovsky saves at 20.5. And again, part of that is a bet on the Sabres to put up some shots. If they get to their 30, that they have 3 games in a row, then they're going to cover this number and they're going to do it comfortably. So a response after losing to Montreal and, getting a little bit of offense, more offense than you got last time you played this team. I'm betting the number a little bit more than I am betting the goalie, I guess, but it's too low a number. Like Lyon, for comparison, is 25.5, and he's been facing more shots lately, so that's not a surprise he'd be higher. I just think it's too much higher. So that's what we got for tonight's game, Sabres and Panthers. Very quickly, before we get out of here, what else to root for around the NHL? As I'm doing that on a nightly basis. The big one tonight. There's two big ones. Because I'm still looking up, but you should still be looking behind you as well. The 7 o'clock slate features Ottawa, Pittsburgh, and Islanders, Capitals. There, you root against the Capitals. That's what's most important. Pittsburgh, Ottawa, not in your hair at the moment. Islanders, they've got the 3rd spot in the Metro. Washington, 6 points behind you. One of those first teams out of a playoff spot. So you'd be rooting against the Caps. 7:30 is the big one. Montreal at Minnesota. Go Wild. The Wild are good. So it would be very deflating if Montreal went on the road and beat a team like Minnesota. So hopefully the Wild can pull that one out. And I can give you the starting goalies, by the way, as we go here. Who's playing their top guys, who's not. Minnesota's playing their top guy, Philip Gustafsson, in goal for the Wild. So that's good news that he's in net. He's very good. The rest of it, the 8 o'clock slate, 9 o'clock, I should say, skip there. The Red Wings at the Avalanche. Another team you're rooting against on the road against the West, but a good Western Conference team, and obviously Colorado, even though they have been losing a little bit as of late, still one of the best teams regular season-wise that I've ever seen. Again, they have slowed down a bit. They've lost 6 of their last 9, but they are coming off a 5-0 win against the Red Wings in Detroit. They had a little bit of a home and home here. So obviously I still think Colorado's a far better team than the Red Wings. So rooting for them in this one, and I think they have a very good shot of winning it. They are starting Mackenzie Blackwood in goal tonight, who has been good this year. And John Gibson is getting the start for the Red Wings, and he's been pretty poor. So that's the other one. And I guess if you want, you can root for Calgary over Toronto, but Toronto's not really in your hair at the moment. So that's what you got around the league. So busy night. And listen, you go by the odds. The Sabres are bigger favorites tonight than either the Red Wings or the Canadiens are. So standings could look very favorable if you get a couple of good results here tonight. So we'll see what we get. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And we'll, of course, start talking some deadline stuff, but we're going to be saving that for once the games run out this week and we get to the Olympics. We'll be doing kind of a quasi-Olympic show plus trade deadline, Alex Tuck extension, all of it. All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow after Sabres and Panthers. Be sure to get into our Discord. You want to chat about it during the game, react to it, or you want to add free versions of the show. Both of those are available. Go to LockedOnSabres.supercast.com. Get into our Everydayers Club. Talk to you tomorrow. You're in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now your number one sports podcast network.